going on, guys? Fizz here. I wanted to make a video talking about 3.17 changes in general, and mostly kind of like nerfs versus buffs and what I think is likely to happen, because it's something that I've kind of like talked quite a bit about on my stream, but I haven't seen anybody else kind of like, I don't want to say put two and two together, but I'm going to, for lack of like a better way to phrase it, because I'm not like talking down to anybody, but I haven't seen like anyone else kind of like put the two and two together here and kind of like piece the puzzle together and like really think about what changes we're very likely to receive. Because I've seen everywhere, everyone's like, oh, next league is going to be huge nerfs, blah, blah, blah. It's going to suck. We're going to get Expedition again, you know, just stuff like that. Might be a little hyperbolic here, but people are like, man, Determination's too good, Spell Suppression's too good, DD's getting nerfed, Traps are getting nerfed, it's going to be tons of nerfs, no buffs, blah, 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 blah. Well, I don't, okay, so let me start here by saying, Ignite DD should probably receive some sort of nerf. Traps 100% should receive a nerf. Seismic Trap, or Exsanguinate Trap and Seismic Trap specifically. Spell Suppression should 100% get some form of nerf, okay? I think Determination is okay, but I think it's relatively likely that they hit Determination or Mana Reservation Efficiency scaling in some capacity. I think 50% Aura Reservation for what it offers is good, because again, we need to remember that like they were supposed to be buffing defenses in the game very strongly anyway. Like the whole concept from the community was like, if you're going to slow down the game, slow down the monsters, not just the players, right? So allow us to live longer and not just get one-shotted, because we're not blowing the screen up anymore, so things shouldn't be blowing us up as fast either. Okay, so I think Spell Suppression, Determination, stuff like that are good tools to add to the player arsenal. I do think the defensive rework was a little bit half-baked in the sense that it was like really good starting point, but we do need more options to be added. And there are a few outliers, like Spell Suppression being so strong that every single build just goes evasion hybrids and gets Spell Suppression on every piece regardless. It's made gearing a lot more boring in this league. So Spell Suppression should probably be toned down a little bit. I don't think Determination needs to be toned down that much, but I can definitely see it happening. I think they kind of need to just like add more things like Determination. And then, you know, because you do have to invest a fair amount of passive points and mana to get Determination to work. But it would not surprise me if they do hit like the flat values on Determination a little bit, as well as maybe hitting mana efficiency reservation somewhere on the tree, just making, you know, making the stats weaker overall, so you could fit like maybe one less aura in the build. So those are the biggest freebies I think that are likely or most likely to get nerfed. That's my opinion. Now, I think there's going to be a decent amount of buffs and new things added to the game, and the reason that I think that, so obviously Chris and Co, he has said multiple times that the dev team is relatively split between people who like share Chris's vision of like wanting the game to be slower, harder, less damage, blah, blah, blah. And then there's another portion of the dev team, which is like, we really want fast-paced gameplay. We're the zoomers, right? We like Giga Dam, tons of influence items, zoom in, you know, speed running the game, right? So we already know the dev team is split, okay? And I guess the part of the dev team that won out, especially, you know, the leaders at GGG sharing this kind of view on the game as well, are the ones who like the slow gameplay. They want to nerf player power. They weren't enjoying the game they were starting to develop. Things like this, right? Well, that's when Expedition, that's when they kind of like won out and said, you know what? No, we need to tone down the game. We're not enjoying the game that we're developing, right? However, revenue and player numbers were at an all-time low in Expedition. So what changed going into 3.15 after Expedition? Or 3.16, sorry. So they kind of walked back almost every change. Almost immediately in Expedition, mana changes were largely walked back. All sorts of stuff were walked back, right? Going into 3.16, tons of power is given back to the players. Tons and tons of power. Like, a good example is they buffed the absolute shit out of armor, right? Granite Flasks now are arguably better than they ever were in the past. Because of changes to flasks and stuff like that. A really good example is the Granite Flask. Because of the changes to flasks and stuff like that, Expedition League, they halved the amount of armor that Granite Flask gave, right? But we got different modifiers and buffed Flask modifiers. However, in this patch, they doubled the amount, like the value you get from armor. So basically, they completely walked back the nerf on Granite Flask, but now it has more duration and can get stronger affix effects on it. So in a lot of ways, some parts of the game were stronger than we have ever been, which is funny. Obviously, unique flasks and stuff like that are still scuffed. But it's just, you know, to point out that in some ways, things got walked back so far that we actually went forward. And then defenses, obviously, major concessions made across the game everywhere. We got massively buffed again in this league. Not really, especially in terms of like damage. We are still way further behind than where we were in like Ultimatum and Ritual and stuff. But overall, player power is way higher than it was in Expedition. I will say Expedition felt really bad to play. I hated that league. Everything felt wonky. Now, I do need to preface this. Obviously, I play HCSSF. It's the only game mode that I play. That means that every change they make to the game is going to be felt by me a lot more intensely than it will be felt in like other game modes, right? I think a really good example is like the build diversity thing. I will never fault anyone playing HCSSF for complaining about build diversity, because for us in the game mode that we play, build diversity is extremely hampered after the Expedition nerfs, because it was always the game mode that had the least amount of build diversity. So when they like drastically nerfed player power, HCSSF felt that the most, because we are the most, you know, like nerfed versions a player could really be, right? Because when you're playing HCSSF, you're obviously incredibly budget because you have to farm everything yourself. And then on top of that, you're playing HC, right? So you're playing hardcore. So you already have a massive checklist of like boxes you need to fill before you can even consider playing a build. So before you even look at like a build's damage or, you know, like things like that, how fast it can clear, it needs to be able to live. It needs, you know what I mean? Like you have a big checklist that you have to clear before you can even consider playing a build. And after the nerfs, there's a lot of builds, a lot of skills, gyms that just can't check the preliminary boxes. And if they can, it takes so much investment that there's nothing left to put into things that will actually make the build feel good to play. So like when it comes to build diversity and stuff like that, we definitely felt that. It got better in Scourge League simply because of the quality of life buffs and the buffs to player defense and stuff like that overall. It's a lot easier to make a character tanky enough to like really deal with a lot of the end game. You just have to really focus on damage. But the point I'm getting at is that we got a lot stronger. And GGG seemed to really abandon this like steadfast, no, we're not doing this anymore. We're gonna take a hit to player numbers. People aren't gonna like it, but this is how we want to develop the game. As soon as they lost a big chunk of revenue, man, that thought process left really quick. They completely abandoned that. And we got huge buffs again. So if we look at Scourge League numbers on some parts has actually been even lower than Expedition. This is the big point of the video. So if numbers are continuing to go down or stagnate at a very low number for both revenue and player count, then it stands to reason that we are likely going to get more power back again, simply because they're bleeding money, right? They're bleeding revenue, so they are not going to compromise all of their income for this vision that some of the people on the dev team have. That's what I think, because if we look at what the past has shown us, it's that they will develop the game how they want until player numbers drop to a point which that is no longer acceptable, right? Then they have to prioritize their revenue, and their revenue will go up when they give players more power back. And I have to say, I've been relatively indifferent towards the nerfing and stuff like that. I think Expedition felt really bad to play because it was like incomplete balance changes. It was like they nerfed a bunch of stuff without changing other things about the game. A good example is players were way squishier, way more susceptible to ailments, and then did way less damage. But everything else in the game still like could like nuke you. There's still aura stacking, stuff like that. So it felt incomplete to me. So I've been relatively indifferent though. I'm like, if they want to slow the game down, whatever, I'm going to play it regardless, right? Like, it's my favorite game. I'm going to play PoE regardless. I don't really have that much of an opinion because I don't really know what I prefer, to be honest. I don't know if I prefer a faster game or a slower game or whatever. I will say after playing, after playing Seismic Trap, Exsanguinate, and Ignite DD, I think I prefer the more like Ritual Ultimatum League-esque game. That's what I think I prefer at this point. I still don't know, but I can tell you for a fact that playing Ignite DD feels very good. And I think the reason it feels so good is because it's like playing pre-Expedition Path of Exile. Like, it's obviously it's overpowered, right? Like, duh. Same with traps, right? But the thing is that they feel so unbelievably smooth to play. The defenses are so good. The damage is so good. Like, it really, again, as someone who like only plays HCSSF, I have to spend a lot of time invested into like a bunch of weird, like semi-meta or off-meta builds to get them to function at like a endgame bossing level. It takes so much investment and time. Playing one of these builds feels very, very, very like Ritual League-esque, where 24, 30 hours into the build, I am like pretty much very handily wiping the floor with bosses. Like, you don't need a 6-link to do all content in the game. You can do it on a 5-link. It'll take longer. You won't deal as much damage, but it is possible. And you could obviously you could say that with anything, right? Like almost any build. You could do all content in the game on a 2-link or a 3-link on a 4-link. It would just take a really long time, like, sure. But the thing that I'm trying to get at here is the feeling. I'm not denying that DD and the traps are super OP, but I can understand why they were so popular this league in terms of play rate. And Spectral Shield Throw Glad last league, because they retained feelings of like Ritual League and prior. Glad from last league obviously lacked damage a little bit, but it was still insanely tanky and had insanely fast clear speed. So it still retained some aspects from builds in Ritual. So I can definitely like, when I go back and I play a build like this that reminds me of what those leagues felt like, it makes playing other builds in modern PoE feel a lot worse by comparison. So like, I think I'm starting to lean more towards I prefer faster PoE. It just feels a lot better. And it could just be because things are out of whack balance-wise with the game right now, right? Slower PoE could definitely work better, but it feels like, in my opinion, they're going about it the wrong way. And just, in general in the game, I know I'm ranting a little bit, but in general in the game, like, things just feel super out of whack. Some things are a 10, some things are a 1, and it's really hard, especially with all the different game modes, to like balance the game and to make the game feel good for everybody. I do acknowledge that, but man, it just feels so weird right now. And I think we're likely to get big buffs for things next league. I highly expect Melee to receive major buffs next league. That is like my big hunch. I think Melee next league is going to be very buff. Even though GGG seems to apparently, from their replies on Reddit, they seem to think that Fortify is working fine right now, even though it's super scuffed if you're not playing slams. I think Melee is going to get big buffs next league. So I'm looking forward to that. Maybe Reeve will be playable again. Hopefully 3.17 gives us some cool new skills to play with as well. I would really like a meta shakeup, because I don't know, like, if DD's likely to get nerfed, I really hope they don't destroy DD though. All they need to do is add a subtext that says deals % less damage with ailments. They'll kill Ignite DD, but not destroy DD as a skill, because in my opinion, DD's been like pretty well balanced for a while now. It's very clear like pros and cons and opportunity cost. If you play self-cast Detonate Dead, you lose a ton of mobility, and you're very reliant on Vol Detonate Dead, obviously. for single target damage, like any detonate dead build. But you lose a ton of mobility, and you have to stand still, like very often throughout boss fights, which makes you more vulnerable. And then obviously you have really bad damage if you're playing detonate dead on like Shaper and Cirrus and stuff like that, right? And then if you're playing Spell Slinger, DD, VD, Volatile Dead, then you will have way better mobility and damage uptime on bosses. However, because you're reserving so much mana for the Spell Slinger setup, you won't be able to run as many auras. Your character will be squishier overall, right? So there's like very good like opportunity cost to different forms of the build. The thing that makes Ignite DD like super broken in my opinion is it takes the best of every world and puts them onto one character. You now get to like completely reserve all your mana, except you still have insane mobility during boss fights. You don't have to interact with the boss pretty much at all, especially once you get the helmet enchant that lets you just extend the duration of your ailments by a ton. You just throw an ignite on the boss and then you just chill and then the boss eventually dies. And you're still getting to run all the auras that you want. You know what I mean? Like it's just, it takes all the different parts of like different things that made different variations of DD strong, removes almost all the weaknesses and retains all the strengths. That's why I think like DD itself, Ignite is so strong and feels so crazy. That being said, it does feel good. I wish more builds felt closer to Ignite DD. Obviously again, it's OP, but after playing it, I really wish more builds were closer to that level of power, honestly. Not stressing out and having to like squeak out every little bit of damage I can feels a lot better, to be honest, because normally those, like in the past, those would be like optimizations made to your character to like min-max, right? But a lot of builds, trust me, I do build diaries all the time on like random shit that people vote for, like on stream and on YouTube, on straw polls and stuff, right? Like I play some weird off meta shit on like so many builds. Even if they're not necessarily super off meta, they're like B tier or C tier builds, or even like A- tier builds if you want to go there. It's so hard to like get all the damage I need to just make, like I can still do the content, but to make the game feel good, it's like a feeling thing, which I went over this in like the build viability debate video forever ago. But to make the game feel good to play, it takes so much effort now. At least in the game mode I play, in my own opinion. Anyway, I'm like super ranting. I went off topic. I think in 3.17, some stuff will get nerfed, yes, but I think we're still going to get more buffs. I think the average power level of the player will still go up a very significant amount. That's my prediction. If I'm wrong, whatever, but I think based on like the trends of what we've seen GGG do in the past and how they tend to react to revenue loss as we see Expedition going into Scourge League, I think that's what's going to happen. Anywho, if you made it this far, I appreciate you. Be sure to let me know what your opinions are down in the comments. Sorry for ranting. This kind of turned into a weird build diary video about like Detonate Dead, but yeah. I appreciate you. You guys have a good New Year's, because I'm also recording this video on New Year's. Probably going to put them both up today. Friendly reminder that I will be live on Twitch as soon as this goes up. I'm still playing Atlas Invasion, by the way. I don't really care about Delirium, and I'm still having fun with my Detonate Dead character, so I don't want to put her away yet. Anyway, peace, guys. Take it easy. Have a good New Year's.